Hi, I'm Kayla, 21, and what I'm about to tell you may sound like something out of a Netflix drama, but every word is true. It all started with a family vacation I never wanted to go to, and it ended with a broken relationship, a wild twist of karma, and a truth bomb that blew everything apart. My mom told me to leave, so I did, but she never imagined what would happen next. Have you ever felt like the black sheep in your own family? If so, you're going to relate to every second of this story. For years, I've been living in the shadow of my younger sister, Zoe, who, in my mom's eyes, could do no wrong. She was the golden child, the star, the one who always got her way. And me? I was just me, the negative one, the sensitive one, the one who ruined everything. I'd accepted it, or at least I thought I had. I'd learned to swallow my feelings, to bite my tongue, to play along with the narrative that I was somehow always the problem. But there's a limit, isn't there? A breaking point where enough is finally enough. This story isn't just about a heated argument and a dramatic exit. It's about finally seeing clearly, about realizing that the picture you've been given of yourself isn't necessarily the truth. It's about finding your voice when you've been silenced for so long, and about the incredible power of walking away from what no longer serves you, even if it's your own family. I never imagined my life would become a public spectacle, that my deepest family wounds would be laid bare for millions to see. But sometimes, when you're pushed to the edge, unexpected things happen. Help comes from places you'd never expect, and a simple act of defiance can snowball into something life-changing. This isn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who's ever felt misunderstood, discarded, or frankly, just plain fed up. It's a testament to the fact that even when it feels like the whole world, and especially your own family, is against you, you are not alone. And the truth? It always finds a way out. So get ready, because this is going to be a wild ride. From a quiet family cabin in Colorado to a viral sensation, from feeling completely alone to finding a community of millions, this is how I finally broke free. This is how I stood up for myself when no one else would. This is how I realized that sometimes, when someone tells you to leave, it's the best advice you'll ever get. Because leaving can be the first step to truly arriving. Comment below if your mom has ever taken someone else's side over yours. Like and subscribe for more real-life dramatic stories that you won't hear anywhere else. Gmail popped up on my phone screen. An unexpected surprise from my mom, Diane. Family vacation to Colorado. Mountains, cozy cabin, quality time. My first thought was, oh, great. Not because I don't like vacations, but because family vacation with my mom and my younger sister, Zoe, usually meant I was signing up for a week of feeling like an extra, uninvited guest in my own family's activities. Zoe, bless her heart, is the quintessential younger sister. Blonde, bubbly, effortlessly charming, and always the center of my mom's universe. Since she was little, Zoe could do no wrong. Her grades were always praised, her artistic endeavors celebrated, her every whim indulged. I remember trying to show my mom a story I'd written in elementary school, only for her to barely glance at it before gushing over a crayon drawing Zoe had made of a stick figure house. That set the tone for pretty much my entire life. I was always the quieter one, the more analytical, the one who saw through the facade. And that, apparently, made me difficult. This trip, like most family gatherings, was entirely my mom's brainchild, sprung on us out of nowhere. There was no discussion, no, what dates work for you, Kayla? Just a flat-out announcement. We're going to Colorado. As if my life, my college classes, my part-time job were just waiting for her to slot a vacation into them. Of course, Zoe was ecstatic. She loved being doted on, and my mom loved doting on her. It was a perfect, self-serving dynamic that left me perpetually on the outside looking in. From the moment we started packing, I felt that familiar dread, the tightening in my chest that signaled I was about to enter the twilight zone of family dynamics. My mom helped Zoe pick out outfits, discussing hiking gear and spa day essentials. I packed my own bag in silence, wondering if I even needed to bring anything other than a book and headphones, because I knew I'd probably spend most of the trip isolated in my own thoughts, just like every other family outing. The drive was just as I expected. My mom and Zoe chatted animatedly in the front seats, giggling over inside jokes, planning out activities Zoe wanted to do. I was relegated to the back, pretending to be engrossed in my phone, but really just listening to the constant stream of their besties dynamic. It was endless. They finished each other's sentences, shared knowing glances, and occasionally, my mom would turn back and offer me a saccharine smile, asking, "Everything okay back there, sweetie?" It was never a genuine question, just a performative gesture to appear inclusive, a fleeting acknowledgement before they dive back into their private world. I remember distinctly thinking, as the snowy Colorado peaks started appearing in the distance, that this wasn't a vacation for us. This was a vacation for them, and I was just the backdrop, the inconvenient third wheel meant to complete the picture of a perfect, happy family. Little did I know, this trip, which already felt like a precursor to hell, was about to become the catalyst for something much, much bigger. What I thought was the worst of it was just the very beginning. Techi cabin was exactly what you'd imagine, a rustic, cozy, with a stone fireplace and views of the snow-dusted pines. It was beautiful, truly. But the beauty was lost on me, overshadowed by the immediate replay of our family's long-standing dynamic. My mom and Zoe immediately claimed the best spots by the fireplace, setting up their devices, discussing what shows they were going to binge watch. I quietly unpacked in a smaller, colder room tucked away at the back, feeling the familiar chill not just from the mountain air, but from the emotional distance. Throughout the first day, it was a constant, low hum of exclusion. They'd make plans right in front of me, but not with me. "Oh, Zoe and I are going to check out that cute little boutique down the road." Or, "Mom, let's cook that fancy pasta dish tonight, just us." Every suggestion I made was met with a polite, dismissive nod, then swiftly ignored. It was always subtle, never overt enough for my mom to acknowledge, but it was there, a palpable wall between us. Zoe, in particular, was a master of the backhanded compliment and the passive-aggressive jab. If I suggested a board game, she'd yawn and say, "Oh, Kayla, you always want to do the most boring things." If I picked up a book, she'd loudly comment to my mom, "Look, Mom, Kayla's already isolating herself." See, I told you she was going to be moody. My mom, Diane, would just chuckle, usually saying something like, "Oh, Zoe, stop teasing your sister," but it was always accompanied by a smile reinforcing Zoe's behavior. Never once did she actually admonish Zoe or stick up for me. It was like I was invisible, or worse, my feelings were completely irrelevant. The tension, which had been simmering beneath the surface, began to boil over by the second day. I desperately wanted to contribute, to find some way to break through the impenetrable bubble my mom and sister had created. I thought about the picturesque trails I'd seen on the drive up. Hey, I ventured at breakfast. Trying for an upbeat tone, I looked it up, and there's a fantastic hiking trail just a few miles from here. We could pack a lunch, make a day of it. My mom's face remained neutral, but Zoe piped up almost immediately, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Oh, a hike? Kayla, honey, that sounds strenuous. This is a vacation." I was thinking more along the lines of a nice, relaxing spa day. They have a great one in town, massages, facials, mani-pedis. She looked to my mom, who instantly brightened. "Oh, Zoe, that's a wonderful idea. A spa day sounds perfectly relaxing. What do you think, Kayla?" My mom turned to me, her eyes already alight with the prospect of Zoe's idea. It wasn't a real question. It was a formality. I could feel the frustration rising, hot and bitter. My suggestion, dismissed instantly. Zoe's embraced without hesitation. "Yeah, a spa day sounds." "Great," I mumbled, the words tasting like ash. The laughter that followed, my mom and Zoe making plans for their massages, felt like a deliberate exclusion, a reinforcement of the fact that my input, my desires, simply didn't matter. Everyone was laughing, planning, bonding, everyone, that is, except me. And the familiar pang of loneliness, sharp and insistent, was growing too loud to ignore that Techi spa day happened, of course. My mom and Zoe left bright and early, leaving me alone in the cabin. I tried to make the best of it, reading my book, doing some light stretching, but the silence felt heavy, full of their absence and the unspoken message that I wasn't wanted. When they returned, they were glowing, chatting excitedly about their massages and manicures. My mom barely made eye contact, just asked, "Did you have a nice quiet day, sweetie?" The tone suggested my quietude was a personal failing, not a direct result of their choices. That evening, during dinner, the tension finally snapped. We were all at the dining table, and my mom was recounting some anecdote from her and Zoe's spa day, punctuating it with loud laughter from Zoe. I was pushing food around my plate, feeling that familiar internal ache. It wasn't just being left out. It was the active discrediting of my feelings, the constant narrative that I was negative or moody when I was simply reacting to being treated as an outsider. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. The words just came out, a torrent of pent-up frustration and hurt. I started, my voice trembling slightly. It's really hard to enjoy myself when I feel like I'm constantly being shoved to the side. Every idea I have gets ignored, and anything Zoe suggests is immediately greenlit. It feels like you two are on your own vacation, and I'm just here, an afterthought. The knife and fork sound stopped. The cabin suddenly felt too quiet. My mom's face, which had been jovial just moments before, hardened instantly. Zoe looked up from her plate, her eyes wide with feigned innocence, then glanced at my mom with a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk. My mom put down her fork with a deliberate clatter. "Kayla," she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous low tone she used when she was truly angry. "What is wrong with you? We're on a family vacation, and all you can do is complain and bring down the mood. Why do you always have to be so negative? We're trying to have a nice time here." "Negative?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Is it negative to want to feel like a part of my own family? To not be mocked or ignored? Zoe spent the entire morning making jabs, and you just enabled her. You never see what she does, or when you do, you excuse it." Zoe gasped, a theatrical sound. "Kayla, I did no such thing. Mom, she's being completely dramatic." And that was it. My mom turned on me, her eyes blazing. "Stop ruining the trip with your sister. Honestly, Kayla, if you're going to be like this, if you're going to be so dramatic and ungrateful and upset everyone, then just leave. Just leave if you're going to be like this." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Silence. A deafening silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Zoe looked shocked, but I saw a flicker of triumph in her eyes. My mom, on the other hand, had a defiant set to her jaw, clearly expecting me to back down, to apologize, to smooth things over as I always had. But something in me snapped. The years of feeling unseen, unheard, and constantly blamed coalesced into a single, overwhelming surge of defiance. Just leave? Fine, I would without another word. I pushed my chair back. The scrape against the wooden floor echoing loudly in the quiet room, my eyes met my mother's. And for the first time, I didn't see fear or defeat in my own reflection. Just a cold, clear resolve. I turned, walked into the small room where my coat hung, grabbed it and pulled it on. I heard a faint, uncertain "Kayla" from my mom, but I didn't respond. I walked to the front door, unlatched it, and stepped out into the frigid Colorado evening, pulling the door shut behind me with a quiet click. They thought I was bluffing, they always did, but this time I wasn't. The cold hit me immediately. It was a biting Colorado evening, already near freezing, and the snow was starting to fall, soft, persistent flakes dusting my hair and eyelashes. I walked, pulling my coat tighter, my heart pounding in my ears. The initial surge of defiant adrenaline was quickly replaced by a growing knot of panic in my stomach. What just happened? What had I done? I was walking along a quiet, tree-lined road, the kind that seems idyllic in vacation brochures but feels isolating and endless when you're stranded on it. The cabin, with its warm lights and the faint scent of dinner, was already receding behind me. There were no streetlights, just the dim glow of distant houses, and the vast, inky sky above my phone screen glowed, the lock screen showing a photo of my friends and me laughing, carefree, a stark contrast to my current reality. I pulled up my banking app. $27.32. That was it. my entire financial net, and I was miles from anywhere I recognized, in a place I'd never been before, with snow falling and night truly setting, and the thought hit me. I had no plan, absolutely no plan beyond walking away. The cold was starting to seep into my bones, and my fingers were getting numb. I knew I couldn't keep walking indefinitely. I scanned the darkness, desperately looking for any sign of civilization beyond the sparse cabins up ahead. A faint, flickering neon sign pierced the gloom. A motel, a small, rundown building with a patchy vacancy sign. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. I stumbled into the cramped, unwelcoming office. The artificial warmth, a shock after the outside air. The man behind the counter eyed me with a tired expression. "Just one night," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. My voice a little shaky. He slid a form across the counter and quoted the price. My heart sank. It was almost exactly $27. I handed over my debit card, watching the transaction go through, leaving me with a grand total of 32 cents in my account. This was it, no turning back. The room was basic, threadbare, and smelled faintly of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. But it had a bed, and more importantly, it had Wi-Fi. I sat on the edge of the saggy mattress, pulling my knees to my chest. The tears that had been pricking at my eyes finally spilled over, hot and stinging. What was I going to do? Mom wasn't going to come looking for me. Zoe certainly wouldn't. I was truly, utterly alone. Then, through the haze of tears, an idea sparked. A small, defiant flicker. I pulled out my phone, flipped the camera to selfie mode. My face was red, streaked with tears, my nose running. I looked a mess. But beneath the raw emotion, there was a strange clarity. This was real. This was happening. "Okay," I whispered to the camera, my voice still hoarse. "So, my mom just told me to leave. Away from our family vacation in Colorado, and I just spent my last $27 on a motel room. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I guess I'm just going to document it." It started as a joke, a way to process the absurdity of it all, a form of self-therapy. I recorded a few more short clips, talking about the argument, about feeling like the black sheep, about the shock of being so completely dismissed. I didn't know what I was doing, but hitting post on TikTok felt oddly liberating. Half a joke, half a cry for help into the digital ether. I had no idea that those raw, unedited moments, fueled by freezing temperatures and a broken heart, were about to change everything. I woke up the next morning in that motel room, still in disbelief. The snow had stopped, and a weak winter sun was trying to peek through the dingy curtains. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, my heart doing a little flutter. Maybe it was my mom finally extending some kind of olive branch. Instead, it was TikTok notifications, dozens of them, then hundreds. My eyes widened as I scrolled. The raw tear-streaked videos I'd posted last night, half as a joke, half as a plea into the digital void, had somehow exploded. Likes, shares, comment after comment. It was mind-boggling. I had maybe 50 followers, mostly friends from college. How was this happening? I started reading the comments, and that's when the real shock set in. It wasn't just random internet noise. It was a wave of affirmation, of understanding, and most powerfully of shared experience. "OMG, my mom does this exactly," commented one user. "Are you my long-lost sister?" "This is my life story," another wrote. Hundreds, then thousands of people were pouring out their own similar experiences with family favoritism, with feeling like the scapegoat, with being told they were too sensitive or dramatic for simply reacting to neglect. A sense of incredible relief washed over me. For so long, I'd been made to believe I was the problem, that my feelings were invalid. But here, in this unexpected corner of the internet, were thousands of strangers telling me, collectively, that I wasn't crazy. It was like a dam breaking. I sat there for hours, just reading, absorbing, feeling less alone than I had felt in years. I decided to keep going. If my raw honesty was resonating with so many people, then maybe this was more than just therapy for me. Maybe it was a way to connect, to share, to shed light on something that clearly affected so many others. I posted a follow-up video, a little less tearful, a little more reflective. I talked about the constant comparisons with Zoe, the subtle digs, the way my mom always seemed to side with her, no matter what. I spoke about the feeling of being gaslighted, of being told my reality wasn't real. The comments continued to flood in. Emotional support, advice, and even more personal stories. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. And then, a particular comment caught my eye. It was from someone with a profile that clearly indicated they were a licensed family therapist. Their handle was @HealingPathTherapy, and their comment was short but profound. What you're describing sounds like narcissistic triangulation. You are not alone, and your feelings are valid. Seek support. Narcissistic triangulation. I'd never heard the term before. I immediately Googled it, and as I read article after article, it was like a spotlight was shone on my entire life. The favoritism, the way my mom would involve Zoe in conflicts with me, the subtle undermining, the constant scapegoating, it all fit. It wasn't me. It was a dynamic, a pattern of behavior that was completely outside of my control. It was a system, and I had been trapped in it. This wasn't just about a fight over a vacation. It was about years of emotional manipulation. That quiet, lonely motel room, with its stale smell and worn furnishings, became a sort of accidental confessional booth. I continued to record, feeling bolder with each passing hour, fueled by the anonymous, yet deeply personal validation from the online community. My initial desperation had morphed into something powerful, a voice. A voice I hadn't realized I had, amplified by the silent screams of thousands who had felt the same way. TikTok wasn't just telling me I wasn't crazy. It was giving me the strength to finally believe it myself. The next 3 days were a blur of TikTok uploads and obsessive comment reading. My videos kept gaining traction, thousands turning into millions of views. I was astounded, but beneath the surface, a part of me was still waiting. Waiting for the message. Waiting for the phone call. Waiting for my mom or even Zoe to reach out, to acknowledge my existence, to perhaps even apologize. Silence. Complete and utter silence from them. Not a text, not a call, not an email. Nothing. It was as if I had vanished, not just from the cabin, but from their lives entirely. This silence, more than any argument, screamed volumes. It confirmed every fear I had ever harbored about my place in that family. It confirmed that their love was conditional, and it was contingent on my compliance and my willingness to stay in the role they had assigned me. I was disposable. I ate cheap motel food, watched the snow fall. I filmed more videos, less about the immediate drama and more about the historical context of my family dynamics based on all the comments and the new term, narcissistic triangulation, that was now haunting me. I spoke about feeling unseen during childhood, about constantly trying to earn approval that never came, about the quiet desperation of always being the scapegoat. The video I posted on the third day was titled, "What It Feels Like to Be Left Out by Your Own Family." I didn't sugarcoat anything. I was raw, vulnerable, and completely honest. When I woke up on the fourth day, my phone was practically vibrating off the nightstand. That video, the one titled, "What It Feels Like to Be Left Out by Your Own Family," had gone stratospheric. It had hit 2.3 million views overnight, and the comments section was a torrent of heartbreak and solidarity. People were sharing their deepest wounds, finding solace in our collective experiences. But it wasn't just strangers anymore. The messages started. First, a few DMs from old friends from high school who had seen my videos and were checking in, some of them saying they always knew something was off, but didn't know how to articulate it. Then, a message from my cousin, Mark. He and I hadn't spoken much since my parents' divorce. My mom had a way of isolating us from my dad's side of the family. He said he'd seen my posts and that they resonated deeply. He hinted at things, old family stories, and offered support. Then came the message that truly shocked me. It was from my Aunt Lisa, my mom's older sister, who I hadn't seen or heard from in over a decade. My mom had a way of cutting people out, and Aunt Lisa was one of her oldest casualties. Her message was long, heartfelt, and apologetic. She told me she'd been seeing my videos and that they had spurred her to reach out. She said that she knew how manipulative my mom, Diane, could be. She confirmed the favoritism, not just towards Zoe, but even dating back to their own childhood. Aunt Lisa revealed things about Diane's past that explained so much. Stories of how Diane always had to be the center of attention, how she subtly undermined her own parents and siblings to get what she wanted, how she always played the victim while orchestrating situations behind the scenes. She shared details about the manipulative ways Diane had navigated family disputes, playing one person against another, always casting herself as the hero or the wronged party. It wasn't just me, it was a pattern, a deep-seated, lifelong pattern. The silence from my mom and Zoe was still deafening, but now it felt less like abandonment and more like an admission of guilt. It was the quiet before the storm, the calm before the truth, emboldened by a sudden online voice and forgotten family connections, would finally erupt at THE's silence fro. And my mom and Zoe eventually broke, but not in the way I might have hoped. Instead of a concerned call or an olive branch, the first contact from Diane was a public declaration of war. I was scrolling through my TikTok comments, marveling at the outpouring of support, when my phone buzzed with an alert. Not from TikTok, but from Facebook. My mom, Diane, had posted. And what a post it was. It was furious, scathing, and dripping with self-pity. She blasted me, without naming me directly, but making it obvious enough for anyone who knew our family. She called me ungrateful, manipulative, and accused me of fabricating drama for attention and clout on the internet. She painted herself as a heartbroken mother, completely blindsided by her troubled daughter's actions, highlighting how much she had sacrificed for me. She even went so far as to suggest I was mentally unstable and needed help. It was a classic narcissistic playbook: deflect, project, and play the victim. For a moment, my stomach dropped. This was it. This was the public shaming I'd always feared. But then an odd calm settled over me. Her post didn't land the way she intended, not by a long shot. My growing TikTok community, who had been following my raw, genuine story, immediately saw through it. The comments on her post were brutal. People linked directly to my TikTok account, saying things like, "Read Kayla's story first before you judge." This mother is classic gaslighting. She's literally proving her daughter's point right here. This reeks of a narcissistic parent throwing a tantrum. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of discrediting me, Diane's desperate move just amplified my voice even further. It cemented in the public's mind that my claims were genuine because her reaction mirrored exactly the manipulative behavior I had described. It was a real-time, public demonstration of the very dynamic I was exposing. The hashtag #FamilyGaslight started trending even more intensely. The floodgates truly opened then. More old family members, emboldened by Aunt Lisa's revelation and my mom's public meltdown, started reaching out. Cousins, my mom's aunts and uncles, people I hadn't seen or heard from in years, sent me messages filled with apologies for their silence and support for my stand. They shared stories, not just about Diane's favoritism towards Zoe, but about a long history of her manipulative behavior within the wider family. One message, in particular, shook me to my core. It was from my estranged father, Kevin. My parents had divorced when I was young, and my mom had done an expert job of alienating me from him, painting him as unreliable, selfish, and uninterested in my life. She always implied he just abandoned us. My dad's message was cautious at first, expressing concern after seeing the viral posts, then slowly, tentatively, asking if he could talk. Over a long phone call, he confirmed my mom's manipulative tactics, detailing how she had deliberately won my relationship with him, controlling communication and twisting narratives to ensure I stayed under her influence. He confessed his own regrets about not fighting harder for me, but his words finally clarified years of confusion and hurt. It turned out the family scandal Diane alluded to in her past, the one Aunt Lisa had mentioned, wasn't just old gossip. It was a well-documented instance where Diane had publicly sabotaged a relative's business venture, then played the victim so convincingly that the relative was ostracized by the family. My dad had witnessed it. This whole ugly history, buried for years under my mom's carefully constructed facade of perfection, was now being unearthed by thousands of curious internet sleuths and a newly invigorated network of family members. Diane had gone public, all right, but she had inadvertently opened a door to her past that she clearly thought was securely locked. The storm was gathering, and it was heading straight for AGR. Empowered by the overwhelming support from my burgeoning online community and the unexpected truths emerging from my extended family, I knew what I had to do. The time for raw, emotional reactions was over. It was time for a calculated, compassionate, yet utterly devastating response. Not a rant, but a dissection. I purchased a small, inexpensive tripod and a ring light with the money someone anonymously sent to my Venmo, a gesture that brought tears to my eyes. This wasn't about drama anymore. It was about laying out the facts systematically. I spent hours compiling childhood photos, and not just happy ones, but overlooked ones. Photos where I was physically present, but emotionally absent, or awkwardly on the fringes of a family moment my mom and Zoe shared. There were so many. They told a story I hadn't fully seen until now. Then came the screenshots. Screenshots of ignored texts from me to my mom asking to spend time together, proposing activities, always met with vague promises or outright deflection, followed by immediate confirmation for everything Zoe suggested. Screenshots of my mom's dismissive replies when I tried to voice concerns. There were countless texts from years ago that showcased clear patterns. The voice memos were harder. These were recordings I'd privately made over the years, mostly when I was feeling particularly low or dismissed after a family interaction, just to process. Hearing my own younger voice, full of hurt and confusion, asking why I was always the problem, was gut-wrenching. But they were potent evidence. One voice memo in particular was from a phone call with my mom where she explicitly stated, "You're just too sensitive, Kayla. Zoe would never react this way." That one felt like a punch to the gut all over again, but now it served a purpose. I carefully crafted my newest video. This wasn't a spontaneous upload. This was a narrative, a response not just to my mom's public attack, but to the entire history of neglect and emotional favoritism that had defined my relationship with her. I started by addressing her Facebook post directly, calmly explaining how her reaction perfectly illustrated the very gaslighting I was describing. I then transitioned into the broader patterns. I showed the photos, explaining the context behind each one, detailing the feeling of being overlooked in real time. I displayed the screenshots of the ignored texts, pointing out the dates and the subsequent prioritization of Zoe's requests. Then, the voice memos, playing snippets, letting my past self speak to the present, vulnerable and raw. I never raised my voice. I never resorted to name-calling or vitriol. My tone was measured, calm, and deeply reflective. I spoke about the emotional labor of constantly trying to prove my worth, the sting of being compared, the deep yearning for a mother's unconditional love that was never fully realized. I explained what narcissistic triangulation was, using my own experiences as clear examples for my audience. I closed the video by stating that my intention wasn't to hurt my family, but to heal myself, and to provide a platform for others who had suffered similar emotional dynamics. I said, "This isn't about revenge, it's about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts, but it also frees." I titled it simply, "My Response." Within hours, it transcended TikTok, trending as #FamilyGaslight across multiple platforms. It wasn't just a video, it was a watershed moment. The comments were less about me now, and more about the collective experience. It wasn't a storm of rage, but a gathering storm of understanding, of recognition, of collective validation. The truth, armed with screenshots and shared trauma, was finally undeniable on my video. My response became a phenomenon. It wasn't just trending. It was igniting conversations on news outlets, psychology forums, and countless social media platforms. I found myself in the bizarre position of being a viral sensation overnight, all because I chose to speak my truth. The first direct response came not from my mother, but from Zoe. A long, rambling DM appeared in my inbox. It was a masterclass in deflection, a familiar dance I'd seen her perform countless times. She accused me of being so unfair, of exaggerating everything, and of publicly humiliating her and Mom. She painted herself as the innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire, and tried to evoke sympathy by saying how hard her life was being the perfect child. She even threw in a few subtle digs about my own perceived flaws, trying to bait me into a defensive argument. I read her message, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a cool detachment. There was no anger, no hurt, no desire to argue. I simply saw the pattern so clearly. I crafted a response, calmly and concisely refuting her points with objective facts, screenshots, and even linking back to specific timestamps in my video where her manipulative behavior was visible. I didn't engage with her. Emotional pleas. I just laid out the irrefutable truth. I then publicly shared a screenshot of her DM with her identifying info blurred and my response, along with a short, final video explaining Zoe's typical defense mechanisms. It served as an educational moment for my followers, demonstrating the classic tactics used in these dynamics. While Zoe was still trying to salvage her image, karma arrived at my mother's doorstep like a tornado. Diane, as I mentioned, worked for a school board, and in some capacity was involved in teacher evaluations and policy. Her public meltdown on Facebook and the subsequent viral spread of my videos, particularly the ones detailing her manipulative history, hadn't gone unnoticed. People started connecting the dots. Complaints, long suppressed or dismissed, began resurfacing. Parents, former colleagues, even previous students stepped forward with stories of Diane's unfairness, favoritism, and subtle, often cruel, abuses of power within the school system. The school board, facing increasing pressure from the public and media attention, announced an investigation into Diane's conduct. I heard whispers through my Aunt Lisa that Diane was being questioned, that her professionalism and judgment were being scrutinized. The perfect, image-obsessed Diane, who had always thrived on control and public perception, was now seeing her empire crumble. The very online world she had scorned as attention-seeking was dismantling her carefully constructed life. The most telling sign of her breakdown? The swift, silent deletion of her Facebook profile. The woman who meticulously curated her online presence, who used social media to trumpet her achievements and control her narrative, disappeared. It wasn't a triumphant exit or a defiant stand. It was a retreat. A recognition at some level that her gaslighting and manipulative tactics no longer held power in the harsh light of public scrutiny. The silence from her this time was not dismissive, but an admission of defeat. It was the sound of her world collapsing. And I, the supposed ungrateful daughter, was simply observing, no longer a victim, but a witness to the profound ripple effects of truth. The immediate aftermath of Diane's public and professional downfall was chaotic, but for me, it marked the beginning of a profound healing journey. The motel room, which had been a symbol of my lowest point, became an interim haven. My dad, Kevin, true to his word, drove all the way to Colorado and picked me up. Seeing him, a figure I'd been systematically alienated from, felt like stepping into a different, healthier version of my past. Moving into his spare room, I started therapy almost immediately, armed with a new vocabulary and a clearer understanding of the dynamics that had warped my perception of family for so long. Therapy was tough, don't get me wrong. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a messy, winding path with unexpected detours and potholes. There were days when anger and sadness felt overwhelming, when I questioned everything. But having a neutral, professional space to process it all, coupled with the unwavering support from my dad and Aunt Lisa, made all the difference. I was finally learning to trust my own perception, to validate my own feelings, and to understand that I wasn't too sensitive or dramatic, but rather a person reacting to invalidating circumstances. My TikTok presence continued to grow. My story, far from being just a dramatic family saga, had become a touchstone for hundreds of thousands of people navigating similar complex family dynamics. I started receiving invitations to speak publicly about my experiences, to appear on podcasts focused on trauma and narcissistic relationships. It was surreal. I went from being unheard in my own home to having a platform where my voice resonated with a global audience. I embraced these opportunities, not for fame, but because I truly believed in the power of shared stories for healing and connection. Every time I told my story, it felt less like recounting a personal wound and more like contributing to a broader understanding of emotional abuse. 6 months after that fateful night in Colorado, I was in a completely different place. Physically, I was thriving in my new environment with my dad, rebuilding a relationship that should have always been there. Emotionally, I was stronger, more self-aware, and armed with boundaries I never knew I deserved. The constant anxiety that had been a low hum in my life for years had dissipated. One Saturday morning, I was sitting with my therapist, discussing my progress. She asked me how I felt about my mom and Zoe now. I paused, genuinely reflecting. The anger had faded, replaced by a quiet, almost sad understanding. They were still wrapped up in their own dysfunctional dynamic, and I realized that my presence, my attempts to break through, would only ever be met with resistance. I understood that I could not change them. I could only change my relationship to them. Later that day, I pulled out my phone. I navigated to my mom's number, then Zoe's. My finger hovered over the block option. There was no rage, no desire for retribution, just a calm, firm resolve. This wasn't about punishing them anymore. It was about protecting myself. It was about choosing peace. I blocked them both. On my own terms, it felt less like a severance and more like a final act of self-preservation, a definitive closing of a chapter that had run its course. The final shot of my video shows me smiling, laughing, vibrant, sharing brunch with friends. Friends who see me, hear me, and celebrate me for who I am. My voiceover plays. I didn't leave the trip. I left the cycle. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't rage, it's the calm after the storm when you finally realize. You were never the problem. You were just the one brave enough to walk away. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you've ever been the black sheep. Trust me, you're not alone.